Hi everyone, how you doing? I hope you're all well in your part of the world. Welcome to my honey and oat cold process soap video. I'm sure you're going to love this one. It's quite an adventure. But before we start, I'd like to make a special dedication of this video to the tribal women and communities of the Nilgiri Hills area around Ooty in Tamil Nadu, India. A man by the name of Prem Kumar, and this is Prem in the blue vest, emailed me recently and asked if he and the organisation he works with called Reforest India could plant some trees in my name as a thank you for my soap videos. Prem told me that he'd been using my videos to help tribal women learn soap making to develop new skills and build potential new income streams for their communities. I was absolutely delighted and really honoured by this request, and Prem sent me some really nice photos of the tree planting, which on this day took place in a different town called Chintamani, which is northeast of Bangalore in Karnataka state. Thank you, Prem, for reaching out to me and honouring me in such a thoughtful and important way. I'm so grateful for the gesture. Prem also told me that Kota women in the Ooty area were looking for ideas of things to make with honey and beeswax. I'd also been receiving requests for a video on a cold process version of my honey and oat hot process soap recipe I shared a couple of years ago. So the stars have aligned with this video, and here it is. As you're going to see in this video, making cold process soap with beeswax and honey in it is quite challenging, and I certainly made some mistakes, but this was my first time of making it and I really wanted to give it a try and share it with you all, so I hope you get something out of it, and I'll definitely point out the things that I would do differently next time. But I started off by weighing out my beeswax and my cocoa butter. You can see I've just got these in pellet form, which are just some old ones that I bought from Aussie Soap Supplies years ago. I'm just trying to use them up. Any beeswax or cocoa butter will be fine. All the recipe details for this are linked below in the description box. I'll put the full recipe up on my website. So I've got this old saucepan that I bought secondhand from my local op shop. I'm using that for my soap making now, which is great. So I weigh out the wax and the butter first, and then I put my liquid oils, this is the olive oil, going in into a separate bowl and then tip them in. So olive oil first. You see I use two different types of olive oil there. It's just because I had some lighter olive oil I wanted to use up. And then the castor oil goes in, and then I added my coconut oil. As I said, all the amounts for this will be in the recipe link below. But you can see I melted my coconut oil before I put it in. I find it easier to weigh out when it's melted. You can do it in a solid state if yours isn't liquid, that's okay too. Next I added a bit of macadamia nut oil. All of these oil measurements have to be very precise in soap making, so you can't just put in whatever you like. Make sure you check the recipe and know what you're doing with soap recipe formulation if you want to make any changes to this. So I put the liquid oils then in straight in with the beeswax and the butter. What we need to do for this recipe is melt all of the oils and the fats and the wax together. Beeswax has quite a high melting point. It melts at about 65 to 70 degrees Celsius. So you really have to have all of your fats all at around that temperature for the beeswax to melt and to stay melted. So I put everything in my pot and I put it on the stove just on low heat, and I get my thermometer out ready to check the temperature. You don't have to have a thermometer to make this soap, but it certainly makes life easier. While my oils and waxes are melting, I get my lye solution ready. You see I've got my safety gear here, goggles and gloves. I'll put a link below to my safety video, essentials video. That's really important. You know what you're doing with soap making before you attempt any recipe. I'm using rainwater. I don't know if you can see the label on that bottle, but this is rainwater from our tanks. It's a lovely soft water. I just filter it and it's great for soap making, but you could use filtered tap water or distilled water as well. And then I add my sodium hydroxide into the cold water. Having this water from the fridge does reduce the fumes a little bit, but you still have to be very careful and wear a mask as well if you're worried about any fumes. You can probably see my windows open there too. I've got the window and the back door open, so lots of ventilation when you're mixing lye solutions for soap making. Always make sure you know what you're doing with safety for soap making. It's really, really important. Once the lye solution's mixed, I just set that aside, come back and check on my oils. You can see that probably most of all the cocoa butter's melted. It's just the little hard bits of beeswax that aren't melted yet. So I'll just check the temperature. It's only 53 Celsius and it needs to be at least 65. So it's got a little way to go yet. It's only 130 Fahrenheit, 54 Celsius. So while I'm waiting for that beeswax, I get a few more things ready. Into this soap, I'm going to add kaolin clay, ground oats, honey, and some fragrance oil. I'm making this recipe very close to my original hot process one. All the additions are the same, except I'm leaving out the titanium dioxide this time. And you'll see a couple of little differences in the oil mixture, but it's very, very close. So I've got my beeswax all melted in the oils then, and you can see this is quite hot. Now it's too hot. It's 86 degrees Celsius, and my lye solution is 64, 65. So that's a perfect temperature for the lye solution because we want it to be pretty close to the temperature of the oils, so that the beeswax doesn't solidify. It would do that if you poured a cool lye solution into this mixture, but those oils are still way too hot. So I'm going to add in my other additions and mix them in, and by the time this is my thinking, that by the time they're mixed in, the temperature of the oil mixture will have come down a little bit. So in went the kaolin clay, the oats and the honey. I'm just going to mix those through with my stick blender just to make sure they're all well blended. One of the reasons why I do this first is because I do know that this mixture could set up very, very fast, and I may not have time to mix these additions in later. So I decide to blend everything that I possibly can in, do it first before the lye solution goes into this oil mixture, and that just gives you a bit of extra time. And that's a good technique to use. If you think your soap recipe is going to set up really fast, add everything in with the oils first, and that way all you've got to add in is your lye solution, and off you go. The temperature is slowly coming down. I don't know if you can see that, it's 77. It's still pretty warm. My thinking with this was it needs to be warm enough so that the beeswax doesn't solidify, but I actually could have left it a bit cooler. It was a bit too hot, and you're going to see what happens with this because I made it with the oils too hot. I decided to add my honey fragrance oil in now as well because I wasn't sure how quickly this was going to set up, and I thought I'm just going to add that in as well. That way it's all mixed in. All I have to do is mix the lye in, and if it solidifies really quickly, well, I'm done. I just got to get it into the mold. So it was actually about 70 degrees Celsius when I poured this lye solution in, which turned out to be a bit too hot, but around 60 to 65 would have been better. But that's the experience. You can see how it went a bit red. That's because of the honey in the mixture. And really it's the sugars in the honey that are scorching a bit, which is why it's gone a bit red. Don't worry though, the soap doesn't turn out red. It actually turns out pretty good, but it does go through some really weird colour changes, which is fairly common for soap recipes anyway. You often do get weird colour changes when you put the lye solution in. So I'm mixing, and I'm thinking to myself, do I need to stick blend this or do I just whisk it? I thought it might set up really, really fast, but it didn't seem to. So I got my stick blender out and started blending it, and then I quickly realized that it was going to set up really, really fast. So I didn't blend it much at all. I probably didn't need to use the blender, but I wanted to make sure everything was really well mixed. So you can see that's it for the blending. I decided to abandon the blending at that point. It's getting really, really thick, so that's it. I just get it into the mold at that point. But it is good. All the additions are already mixed in, so I didn't have to worry about it getting even thicker while I was trying to mix in clay or fragrance or anything like that. So at least I know my soap batter is very, very well mixed, which is great. And sorry about any background noise that you can hear. It's really noisy around our place today. There's all motorbikes and lawnmowers and construction going on, so sorry about that. I'm just going to push through though. So I've poured the soap into my log mold, and I wanted to demonstrate the difference with this kind of soap, the colour difference compared from when you gel the soap, which is going to happen in that log mold, and when you don't gel the soap, which you can do when you put them in individual silicone molds. Soap just doesn't get hot enough in little individual molds like that, so the soap doesn't go through a gel phase quite as dramatically anyway, and you see a bit of a colour difference. So I just wanted to demonstrate that, which is why I poured some of the soap into those 3 little molds on the side. Now you can see I'm tapping this log mold down. It is pretty firm. It really did set up really quickly. And that's to be expected with beeswax. This recipe's got 2% beeswax in it. So yeah, I mean, 2% is about the limit, I think, in my experience and from what I've read. I've never tried a higher level of beeswax. I think 2%, it adds nice hardness to the soap. And it's a good way to use beeswax if you have access to that as an ingredient and you really want to use it. But adding too much more can make the recipe really hard to handle, which is why I actually prefer to make this using the hot process method, which was my original video. But I just wanted to try this out as cold process, and lots of people asked me about it, so I thought, why not? I'm just adding some oats on the top there, and of course the oats are in the batter as well, and I'm fairly happy with that at this stage. But wait, there's more. Don't leave the video yet, people. There's some interesting bits coming. Yep, this happened. Yes, the joys. So this, my friends, is a great example of your soap volcanoing, or almost volcanoing. Oh gosh, I'm looking at that now, thinking to myself, stop pressing the soap. This soap got overheated in this mold. I put it in my cooler, so it was a bit insulated, and it got too warm, and it was too warm to begin with. You can see me standing there just staring at it, thinking about it, trying to decide what to do. So it's cracked. It has risen up a little bit and cracked. But if that happens, all you do is take it out of the insulation. Just leave it at room temperature, let it just try and cool off a little bit. You don't have to put it in the fridge. That may help. I just left mine out. But eventually the soap, here it is again, just in case you missed it. But eventually the soap, it settles down again. So the crack is, I was a little bit having fun playing with it. It was a really unique experience for me. This has never happened before. And I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen. I tried to press it down a little bit, but in reality, it settles down itself, and you've probably seen the photo of the finished soap at the beginning. It actually settled down just fine, so I didn't need to be fiddling around with it and pressing it like I did. But never mind, it was a bit of an adventure, and here is the soap the next day. So it's fully saponified. I've tested it with pH paper, and these are the ones from the silicone molds. You can see that they're a nice light creamy honey colour. The little caramel kind of coloured spots in there, that's the oats. The oats do scorch a little bit and they will go a little bit brown, which you don't get in the hot process version because you can add them after the cook, which is one of the advantages. But it's pretty nice little soap rounds. Probably quite enjoy using them. The honey fragrance I added in this was pretty nice. It's just an old one that I'm trying to use up that some of my friends like, so I thought I'd put it in, but you don't have to add fragrance. And here is the final log of soap. it came out of the mold really easily because it is quite firm. And you can see some of the edges, the gelling didn't go quite to the edge. It's a little bit darker in the middle than it is on the edges and on the corners. But overall, I'm pretty happy with it. See the big crack down the middle? It's not great. It's not my most attractive soap I've ever made, but that's okay. This is just for our personal use and for, friends and family and people who I give it to. So it'll be fine. Everybody will like it, I'm sure. And you can see I got some cracking at the bottom there, which is a bit annoying, but that's quite common with soap with beeswax in it. It can make brittle soap. And I also upped the cocoa butter amount in this recipe from 10 to 13%, and it can make soap brittle as well. This may not have happened if I had have cut it earlier, but I didn't have time to cut it the night before, so I left it probably over 12 hours before I cut it. So I did get a little bit of breakage at the bottom. The best way around this really is to make this soap in individual molds. That is what I would do if I was making this again. Or make it hot process, which is ultimately really, really easy because everything gets cooked and you're putting it into the mold. There's no cracking. It's a lovely soap. So, if you want to make this cold process, you can, but it is a little bit trickier. But this soap cut up really nicely and it'll be beautiful soap to use. It'll have exactly the same qualities as the hot process version. And I'll share some links to the review of my hot process one and the actual video for that, so you can have a try of that method too if you want to. But I just really wanted to do this to compare and also to show this as an example of another recipe that you can use with beeswax and honey for the Kota women around Uti. I hope you enjoyed the video, everyone. It was a bit of an adventure, but a good learning experience, and I really enjoyed it. I quite like this soap. It's nice and rustic and a real pleasure to use, so I'm happy with it. Thanks for all of your support, everybody. I really appreciate everything that you do to support me in what I'm doing. It's just wonderful. And thanks for watching. I look forward to seeing you again soon.